Hey guys, I'm back with some pre-order beta tips and tricks. This is going to be a rapid fire session. I'm not looking to waste any time, so let's get into it. First things first, let's actually talk about something you might want to do before you get into the game. While at some point, hopefully before launch, maps will be in the game, presently maps aren't really a thing, so I still recommend downloading somebody else's map pack. I prefer goods, but there's also rules. You'll find the link to this in the description below. You're going to go to the GitHub repo. You're going to download the zip file as I show you here on the screen. Once it's on your desktop or download folder, you're going to extract the goods maps folder, and then you're going to place that goods maps folder inside of your maps folder in your EQL directory. You'll see at the top of my file explorer directory here, the default installation path for EQL. Yours may differ depending upon where you installed it. Track it down in your PC. Again, you're going to move that goods maps folder into the maps folder. And then once you're in game, you're going to open up your map window, and I believe M is the default key for that. And then in the upper left-hand corner, you will see the drop down for the various maps that you have installed. Now, when you right click on the frame of the map, you can choose the display style. You can also choose which map you want to use. I prefer the compact mode, and I like to keep it off to the side. As a streamer, I typically always have my map open so people can see where I'm going, what I'm doing, etc., etc. But of course, there are plenty of reasons to keep it open, even if you're not streaming. And I will go over those reasons a little bit later whenever there's something important to show off. You can also fiddle with the settings a little bit. I'm a big fan of the Auto Z feature. That way, when you're in dungeons, you don't have 15 layers of lines stacked on top of each other. If you fiddle with the fade slider in the map, that'll determine how much of the lines you can see. I typically have mine set pretty low. That way I'm just seeing what's on my level. One of the biggest questions that I've been asked over and over again, what's the deal with stances and invocations? Stances are something related to melee, invocations related to casters. Every stance does something different. I'm typically in offense stance, which increases your melee damage and your hit rate. Striker stance, which increases your special attacks like backstab and whatnot. Defense stance reduces physical damage by 50%, magical damage by 20%, and so on and so forth. The link to the EQL wiki is in the description below. I highly recommend checking out that website if you haven't already. Poke around, look around, read some stuff. I'll be talking more about the wiki here in a moment, but a lot of the questions you may have could possibly be answered there. In terms of invocations, some of the invocations that I'm regularly using are Recovery, that helps you regenerate mana and reduces the mana cost of spells by 5%. Inversion, which, long story short, speeds up your cast time, but forces you to wait an extra second or two between casts. I'm not going to go over every single stance and invocation. Again, this is meant to be rapid fire. Go read them. Berserkers are going to love Berserker stance, for example. That one's huge and amazing. Balance stance also comes into play for regenerating endurance, and so on and so forth. You will learn which ones are helpful and necessary and which ones can mostly be ignored for the most part, but they all do serve a purpose. So read up and again, ask questions. Also, in the most recent patch, they allowed you to keybind stances and invocations directly. You can find that in the options. You'll go to controls, key bindings, and then in the drop-down menu, you'll see the stances and invocations area. All right, as I've said a few times, there are many links and many things in the description below. We've talked about the EQL wiki, eqlwiki.com. That one is a huge resource. However, bear in mind that it is not 100% updated or accurate for EQL. It is a work in progress. So at the end of the day, some stuff is accurate, some stuff isn't. But it is a fairly accurate representation of Legends and what's available, so on and so forth. There are a couple of websites that I know about that kind of help you pick out your trio and how defensive they are, how offensive they are, what they bring to the table. Feel free to poke around those. This one gives you a quick overview of how to unlock races, something a lot of people are looking forward to doing. That way you can run around as your Ogre Bard or your Dark Elf Ranger, Dwarf Shadow Knight, whatever it is. And this one right here, even I have found particularly useful because it gives you a zone connection map. And sure, it's got Kunark and Velius in it, and Kunark and Velius are not out. Heck, Velius may never come out. We only know that Kunark is coming. But I found it very useful, especially early on when I was relearning things and getting comfortable with the world again, to know that which zones were connected and how they led into each other. All right, let's talk real quick about the menu. A couple of cool features built into the menu. Monks, talking to you specifically, there's an option for a Feign Death toggle. Instead of having to sit or stand when you're done with Feign Death, You simply press your FD key again and it pops you back up. Persistent auto attack I have found to be tremendously helpful if you're fighting 2, 3, 4, however many mobs at a time. Once one dies, your auto attack stays on. When a mob lands a hit, it automatically targets it, and then you just keep on wailing away. It's awesome. You can show or hide your helmet with this option. You can double up keybinds in this game. That way, if you press W, not only do you move forward, but you could also do something off of your hotbar, and more on that in a moment. You can also adjust textures. That way, your spell icons can be whatever you want them to be from whatever era you prefer. On top of that, you can fiddle with your nameplates, your scrolling combat text, spend some time in the menu. And if you need to, you can pause the video at any point in time to see what my settings look like if you simply want to copy and replicate them for your experience. All right, let's say you're sick and tired of your spell effects. /show spell space off turns it off. And of course, the opposite is true if you want to turn it back on. I have found that as somebody who fights in tight quarters in Lower Guck and Befallen and everywhere else, pulsing, flashing bright lights just aren't very enjoyable to look at. So feel free to turn those off. A moment ago, I had talked about doubling up on keybinds. Let's say you wanted to put your forage on your W key. Again, you can do that by making sure that your W is moved forward, and then on your hotbar, there's a W that's bound, as you can see is the case on my hotbar. And speaking of forage, if you want to have a really easy forage macro, this one on the screen works really well. Presently, forage has a 60-second cooldown, hence the timer. That way your macro shows you the cooldown on it, and the double auto inv just makes sure that your item goes into your inventory more often than not. If you find that something is still on your cursor, just press W and it will go into your inventory. And again, you can do this with anything else. Sense heading if you really wanted to, tracking, that way you can level up your tracking, and so on and so forth. Speaking of tracking, if you have your tracking window open and you click on a mob in the list, it does show up on your map. That way, when you're hunting a specific mob, of course, we have all those little dots to indicate that there are mobs around us, but you can specify and then determine exactly where it is. Something I touched on in my last video, but I think is actually really important to touch on again, considering we're all about to start playing the pre-order beta, is personal instancing. By clicking on that red button with a number on it, you can change the difficulty in the instance of your public instance. Or if you go to create instance, at that point in time, the drop-down menu allows you to determine the level of difficulty, 0 through 4, whether it's solo or multiplayer. If you want to play with friends, you need to do multiplayer. And then respawning or non-respawning. Respawning means mobs will continuously respawn, that we can farm them for experience and loot. Non-respawning is something that's coming later. It'll have bonuses, but we're not talking about that today. All right, here are some rapid fire abilities and AAs in no particular order. If you're playing with friends and you want to group up, Gather Party is very nice because it allows you to summon anyone in your party directly to you every 6 hours. Origin will teleport you back to your starting city. Bind Affinity allows you to bind your character to a specific location. Mine, for instance, is in Lower Guck. That way, anytime I'm ready to get back to leveling anything between the 30 to 50 range, I just gate and I'm ready to rock and roll. And you can find where your origin and your bind point are on the character window by scrolling down. Quick Buff is an awesome AA. It costs 5 points and it's worth every point. Any buff that you have loaded on your spell bar at that point in time, when you press Quick Buff, it will cast every single buff all at once. And yeah, it uses a lot of mana, but it saves you a ton of time. It also casts the spells on any other group members and pets. In terms of important AAs, we just talked about Quick Buff. Steadfast Will I find to be hugely helpful. I have mine set to 7 out of 8. It's fairly expensive, especially early on, but getting stunned over and over and over is the absolute worst. So I'm a big believer in that the less you're stunned, the less you're going to die and the more damage you do. So get it if you want. I recommend it. Of course, Mnemonic Retention allows you to expand your spell bar from 8 spells up to 14 spells if you buy all the ranks. I highly recommend you do. And then you have things like mana regen, spell cost reduction, and so on and so forth. When it comes to class AAs, some are worth far more than others. The easiest example I always come up with is the Bard's Symphonic Aura. Symphonic Aura allows you to have 5 songs pulsing in the background, group, or AoE, and it's very much a set it and forget it system. That way you have beneficial and detrimental songs going, and it's something you rarely ever have to worry about or think about. Other classes simply don't have good AAs or don't have AAs at all, so your mileage may vary. Let's talk about loadouts real quick. Whenever you want to change your loadout, you can open the loadout area, and you can pick and choose your secondary and tertiary as you see fit. I highly recommend copying instead of sharing a loadout. When you copy, it's literally just that, a copy that you can do whatever you want with. It doesn't affect your previous loadout. If you're sharing a loadout, anything you do on that second loadout affects anything else using those loadout settings. So think of it this way. If you have a loadout of SK Cleric Bard and you drop the Bard and pull in a Shaman, if you decided to share that loadout instead of copying it, and you decided to remove everything related to Bard from your hotbars, when you swap back to your Bard, all of those changes will still be there, meaning you'll have to set the Bard back up again. So my recommendation, copy, don't share. Let's talk about abilities real quick, such as backstab, kick, smite. Every class, of course, brings something different to the table. You're going to want to figure out what your class does. You know, SK's a Reeve, which takes some of your HP and turns it into damage. Paladin Smite, which takes some mana and turns it into damage, and so on and so forth. Some things you want auto-skilled all the time. Other things like Bash, maybe not, because you want to specify when you use it to interrupt a cast. Speaking of things like Backstab and Bash, if you go to your character window and you see those two any slots, you can put things like shields, daggers, or anything in your any slots. Rogues can backstab if you put a dagger in the any slot. Shield classes, however, cannot bash if you have a shield in your any slot. Don't ask me why, just the way it is. All right, a few more tips. Tradeskill depot at the bank will hold Tradeskill items. A lot of them you can send to the depot automatically in the advanced loot window, so make sure you're checking that out. And if you have more questions about the advanced loot window, go check out my previous video. I go over it at the very beginning of that video. There are various storage tabs in your character window. As you swap loadouts, a lot of gear can be found here, so always check this first before worrying about losing something. If you're swapping loadouts and there's a specific piece of gear that will not work for your new loadout, this is typically where it winds up. You can also store clickies and augmentations and all sorts of stuff here. Motes are worth talking about real quick. They just introduced the spell upgrade system, so you can take motes of any level and put it into a spell, and you can see how high it ranks it up. Unlike gear, where you can only take motes of a certain level to level things up to a certain level. Will this system stay the way it is? Obviously, I don't know. The spell upgrade system makes more sense, so hopefully the item upgrade system will catch up at some point in time. You can also go to this NPC and exchange lower motes for higher motes should you want to. You can also do large quantities of motes at a time instead of only 2 at a time. Let's talk about Bard instruments and exaltations real quick. Find the Bard vendor in your city, buy 2 of each instrument, merge them together, and remove the exaltation. That exaltation can then be placed into any weapon as you see fit. I, for instance, have lute, drums, brass, and wind, 1 in my main hand, 1 in my offhand, and then 1 in both any slots because I have a shield in both of my any slots. Other exaltation slots are as follows. Ornamentation is like a transmog system. It's not in the game yet to my knowledge, but it's coming. Focus effects, we've already covered the Bard items, but there are other focus effects like improved damage or mana reduction, that kind of stuff. Clicky effects are just what you think they are. They're clickies like the shrink shoulders from Blackburrow, and worn effects are exactly that. Effects that are worn, such as this see invis effect on the mask that I have. Focus effects become available at +1, clickies at +2, worn effects at +3, procs at +4. And of course, I guess I should explain, procs are procs, something that will proc during combat off your weapons. All right, I know it's been a lot of information. I appreciate your patience. I hope you learned something. Please comment below if you think there is anything else new players should know about or be aware of going into the pre-order beta. If I'm wrong about something, or I misspoke, or something's confusing, comment below. I don't mind being fact-checked and corrected because the whole point of this is to relay accurate, pertinent information. My name's Brutal. Thanks for being here. Again, you can check me out on Twitch, of course, here on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one.